Welcome back to the Deep Dives. We're diving into the world of blockchain this time with Don and Alex Tapscott's Blockchain Revolution.
Oh, yeah.
We've got excerpts covering how this tech could change everything from business to, like, the fabric of society.
Mm.
It's a pretty ambitious book, right?
It is, yeah, it is. The Tapscotts, they don't just focus on the buzz around Bitcoin.
Right.
They actually see blockchain as this tool to decentralize power and to create new systems that are more transparent.
Now, you've probably heard of Bitcoin,
Yeah.
but what the Tapscotts highlight is this whole evolution of computing, like from those massive centralized mainframes to the distributed networks we use today.
Mm-hmm.
And they see blockchain as, like, the next step in that evolution.
Yeah, and they're not just talking about the tech world either.
Right.
The shift towards decentralization, it could really impact how we think about things like governance, business, even how we interact with each other online.
So the book actually dives deep into the 7 design principles of blockchain: networked integrity, distributed power, value as incentive, security, privacy, rights preserved, and inclusion.
It's a mouthful.
Each one's, like, crucial to understanding why this tech is so different.
Yeah.
For example, let's talk about that value as incentive principle.
Okay.
How could that disrupt, like, a business, say, like Airbnb?
Oh, well, imagine a platform where you could rent an apartment directly from another person, like completely cutting out Airbnb as the middleman.
Oh, wow.
That's the kind of disruption that value as incentive enables, because it fosters a system where everyone benefits from the platform's success.
No more platform fees, sign me up. But how would something like that even work?
Well, the Tapscotts call it Airbnb,
Airbnb.
and it would operate on a decentralized network.
Okay.
Think of it like a network of computers all verifying and recording transactions instead of just one company controlling everything. That means instant secure settlements directly between hosts and guests.
So it's like taking the power back from the corporation and putting it directly in the hands of the people.
Exactly. And because it's built on blockchain, Airbnb inherits all those design principles we talked about earlier. Security, privacy, rights preserved, those are built into the system from the ground up.
That's a powerful example of how blockchain could reshape an existing business model.
Mm-hmm.
But the book goes beyond Airbnb. They have a ton of, like, mind-blowing examples of other decentralized applications.
Oh, yeah.
Or dApps, as they call them.
Right.
And these dApps aren't just limited to disrupting things like rentals.
Or no.
They could change how we manage supply chains, how healthcare records are kept, even how we vote in elections.
Exactly. It's a whole new way of thinking about how we create value and interact with each other.
But even with all this talk of decentralization, the book acknowledges that traditional organizations still have a part to play in this new world.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the Tapscott suggests that blockchain could actually make companies operate more effectively.
It's about reducing that bureaucracy, increasing transparency, and empowering employees. The book even suggests that the traditional hierarchy, the one we see in corporations, that could be a thing of the past.
Oh, wow.
Like instead of the CEO calling all the shots, decisions would be made through consensus,
Interesting.
guided by rules encoded on the blockchain.
So instead of the CEO calling all the shots, decisions would be made through consensus, guided by rules encoded on the blockchain.
That's the idea behind what they call a distributed autonomous enterprise, or DAE. It's essentially a self-governing organization that's run by a set of rules on the blockchain. Think of it like a company that runs itself. Humans play a role, but more collaborative than top-down.
It all sounds incredibly futuristic. It makes you wonder what the future of work will look like in a blockchain-powered world.
It's a big question, and the book doesn't shy away from the challenges either.
One of the biggest challenges the book tackles is scalability.
Mm-hmm.
Can blockchain technology actually handle the load if more and more people and devices start using it?
It's the million-dollar question, right? It's like a highway system.
Huh.
If too many cars get on at once, things slow to a crawl.
Oh, yeah.
Developers need to find ways to make sure blockchain can keep up with demand. Otherwise, transactions could become slow and expensive. And that defeats the purpose of a decentralized system.
Another challenge the book highlights is the regulatory landscape.
Mm-hmm.
Governments are still figuring out how to deal with cryptocurrencies and all these new blockchain applications.
Right. And that uncertainty, that can make businesses hesitate to invest in the technology.
Yeah.
We need to find a balance between fostering innovation and protecting consumers from bad actors.
And speaking of bad actors, we can't forget about the security risks.
It's true. Blockchain itself might be secure, but the applications built on top of it can be vulnerable to hacking and fraud.
Right.
It's a constant back and forth, and
Yeah.
developers, They have to be really careful to ensure their applications are secure, especially when dealing with things like financial data.
So it's clear that the blockchain revolution is a bit of a double-edged sword. There's a lot of potential, but there are also some real challenges to overcome.
Absolutely. But even with those challenges, the potential benefits of blockchain are so significant that we can't ignore them.
Right.
The book actually dives into some real-world examples of how this technology is already being used today, starting with the complex world of supply chain management.
Yeah, it's amazing to think that blockchain can be used to track a product from its origin all the way to the consumer.
I know, right?
The book uses the example of tracking a coffee bean, like from the farm to your cup. And it's fascinating how that level of transparency can benefit everyone involved.
It really can. Consumers can be sure about where their products are coming from and how they were produced,
Yeah.
especially in industries like food or pharmaceuticals where knowing the origin is really important.
And for businesses, it can help prevent fraud, reduce waste, and make the whole logistics process more efficient. It really seems like a win-win situation.
Exactly. And there are already companies, like Walmart, using blockchain in their supply chains to track things like the mangoes they sell, making sure they're fresh and safe for consumers.
It's great to see how this technology is being used to tackle real-world problems, but let's zoom out a bit and think about the bigger picture.
Okay.
What kind of impact could this blockchain revolution have on society as a whole?
That's a big question. And the Tapscotts, they argue that blockchain has the potential to create a more equitable and democratic society.
Now, that's a bold statement.
It is.
How could blockchain achieve something like that?
Well, for one thing, it can empower individuals by giving them more control over their data and finances. Imagine a world where you own your data and you decide who gets access to it. That's a huge shift from the current model where our data is often collected and used without our consent.
It would certainly change the relationship between individuals and big companies. Yeah.
It would, yeah. And it's not just about individual empowerment either. Blockchain can also help create more transparent and accountable institutions. Think about it. Recording transactions on a public ledger makes corruption and fraud much harder to pull off.
It's like shining a light on the dark corners of bureaucracy, making it harder for people to hide their shady dealings.
Exactly. And that increased transparency can lead to a more engaged and informed citizenry.
It's a compelling vision of a more equitable and democratic future. But are there any potential downsides to this that we should be aware of?
Of course. Some critics argue that blockchain could actually make existing inequalities worse.
How so?
Well, there's this concern that people who are already technologically savvy and wealthy might be in a better position to take advantage of the opportunities that blockchain creates. It's kind of like the digital divide argument. And if we're not careful, blockchain could end up creating a new class of crypto elites.
It's a sobering thought.
It is, yeah.
It sounds like we need to be very careful about how we implement this technology and make sure that it benefits everyone, not just a select few.
Exactly. And that brings us back to this crucial question of governance.
Right.
How do we make sure blockchain is developed and used in a way that's ethical, equitable, and sustainable?
That's a question we'll definitely be exploring in more detail later on in our deep dive.
Stay tuned because things are about to get even more interesting as we delve into the complex world of blockchain governance and its implications for the future of our society.
So we left off talking about how to govern this rapidly evolving blockchain landscape.
Yeah, it's a challenge, because while the idea of this self-governing system sounds amazing, there's still this need for rules of the road.
Right.
Ways to ensure that everyone's playing fair.
The Tapscotts argue that those traditional models of governance, the ones that rely heavily on central authorities, they're not really built for these unique challenges that blockchain presents.
Yeah, it's like, trying to use an old paper map to navigate, a constantly shifting digital world.
Yeah.
We need new frameworks, new organizations that are as agile and innovative as the tech itself.
So what are they proposing? Do they offer any concrete solutions for governing this blockchain revolution?
They do, yeah. They suggest creating something called Global Solution Networks.
Global Solution Network.
Or GSNs for short.
GSNs, what are those?
Imagine a network of all the key players, companies, governments, NGOs, academics, even individual users, all working together to tackle the challenges and opportunities that blockchain presents. That's a GSN.
So it's like A global brain trust for blockchain, where everyone
Yeah.
collaborates to find solutions.
Exactly. And these GSNs would focus on specific areas like setting technical standards, figuring out ethical guidelines, and navigating the tricky world of regulations.
That sounds promising.
Yeah.
But, like, how would these GSNs actually work in practice? Would they have any real power to enforce their decisions?
That's a great question, and one the Tapscotts address directly. They acknowledge that GSNs, they would need to be carefully designed to avoid becoming too centralized or bogged down in bureaucracy.
Right.
We don't want to recreate the very problems that we're trying to solve.
It's a delicate balancing act.
Yeah.
But if these GSNs are structured properly, could they really provide the framework for responsible development and adoption of blockchain tech?
The Tapscotts believe so. They see GSNs as a way to foster collaboration and leadership on this global scale, which is crucial because this blockchain revolution, it is a global phenomenon.
That makes sense. You can't solve a global issue with a local solution. But let's shift gears for a moment and bring things back down to earth.
Yeah.
All this talk about governance might feel a bit abstract.
Yeah.
How does blockchain actually impact individuals on a day-to-day level?
That's where things get really interesting. The Tapscotts, they argue that blockchain has the potential to change how we manage everything from like our identities to our finances to even our relationships.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Tell me more about how blockchain could actually impact my daily life.
Let's start with identity. The book talks about using blockchain to create a more secure and efficient way to manage like our digital identities.
Okay.
Imagine a world where you only need one secure digital ID to access all sorts of online services.
So no more remembering dozens of passwords and answering endless security questions.
Exactly. Think of it like a digital passport for the internet. And because it's built on blockchain, this digital ID, it would be way more secure and less prone to fraud.
That sounds amazing, but what about privacy? Wouldn't having one single digital ID make us more vulnerable to surveillance?
It's a valid concern, yeah. But the Tapscotts argue that blockchain can actually enhance privacy, giving individuals more control over their data. So instead of, handing over all your information to access a website, you could choose which parts of your identity to share with different services.
So it's like choosing which pieces of a puzzle to reveal, giving you more control over your digital footprint.
Exactly. It creates a more balanced and ethical relationship between individuals and the companies they interact with online.
Now let's move on to something that affects all of us: finances. How could blockchain change the way we manage our money?
This is where things get really exciting. The book talks about blockchain completely transforming financial services, making them more efficient, inclusive, and accessible.
I'm ready for this financial revolution. Tell me more.
For starters, blockchain could make sending and receiving money, both within a country and internationally, much easier and cheaper. No more waiting days for a bank transfer to clear or paying huge fees to send money overseas.
That would be a game changer, especially for people who rely on sending money to family in other countries. But the book goes even further, right?
It does, yeah. It explores how blockchain could empower those who are currently excluded from traditional financial systems, the unbanked.
Right.
It gives them a safe and affordable way to manage their money.
It sounds like blockchain could really level the playing field when it comes to finances, giving everyone an opportunity to participate.
That's the potential. And the book, it explores how it could revolutionize lending, borrowing, investing, even asset management.
Wow.
It's like a complete overhaul of the system as we know it.
While this transformation probably won't happen overnight, the potential benefits seem huge. But it's important to remember that blockchain isn't some magical solution to every problem.
Right. The book is very clear about that. It acknowledges the potential downsides and emphasizes the need for careful and thoughtful governance.
We can't just adopt this technology without considering its impact on society as a whole. There are definitely potential risks to consider.
Absolutely. We need to be aware of the potential for blockchain to worsen existing inequalities or be used for harmful purposes. Technology is a tool, and it can be used for good or bad depending on the intentions of the people using it.
It's a reminder that we need to be proactive, not passive, when it comes to shaping this technology. But the Tapscotts do offer a pretty compelling vision of what a positive blockchain-powered future could look like.
They envision a future where finance is more democratic, transparent, and empowering for everyone. It's a future where individuals have more control over their money. And where access to financial services is no longer a barrier to opportunity.
It's an inspiring vision, and it's clear that the Tapscotts believe we have a responsibility to steer this revolution in the right direction. But Before we wrap up, let's explore one more area where blockchain could have a huge impact: creativity and the arts.
Oh yeah, this is an area where blockchain could really empower artists and creators in ways that were never possible before.
Hmm.
It could give them more control over their work
Okay.
and change how they interact with their fans.
This sounds like it could be a game changer for the creative industries. But how exactly could blockchain achieve that?
Well, for one thing, blockchain can help artists protect their intellectual property rights.
Right. And fight piracy. No more worrying about illegal downloads or unauthorized streaming of their work.
That's a big deal for artists who are trying to make a living from their creativity. But what about the relationship between artists and fans? How would blockchain change that?
Imagine a world where fans can directly invest in their favorite artists, supporting their work and sharing in their success. It's like crowdfunding on a whole new level. And because everything is tracked on the blockchain, there's complete transparency about how the money is being used.
That level of transparency and accountability could really build trust between artists and their fans. Are there any real-world examples of how this is being done right now?
Absolutely. The book highlights platforms that allow artists to sell their work directly to fans, cutting out the traditional middlemen, like galleries or record labels. And there are platforms where fans can invest in artists and receive a portion of their royalties. It's fascinating to see how blockchain could disrupt these traditional models and create a more equitable and sustainable ecosystem for the creative world.
Yeah,
But, as with everything else we've discussed, it's not without its challenges.
that's right. The book acknowledges that there are technical, regulatory, and security hurdles to overcome before blockchain can truly live up to its transformative potential in the creative industries.
But despite the challenges, the potential for blockchain to empower creators and transform how we experience and support art is undeniable.
And as with all aspects of the blockchain revolution, it's up to all of us to shape its development and ensure that it leads to positive outcomes for everyone involved.
It's a reminder that we're not just passive observers of this technological revolution. We have an active role to play in determining its course and impact on our lives. But that's a conversation for the final part of our deep dive.
You know, as we've been talking about all these potential impacts of blockchain, it reminds me of the early days of the internet.
Oh, yeah. In what way?
Well, so much excitement and possibility, but also so much we just didn't know.
Right.
And a few people, trying to take advantage of all the newness.
Yeah, it's a good comparison. The Tapscotts, they really emphasize that, the success of blockchain, it really hinges on leadership, on people making ethical decisions as this technology develops. It can't just be about the tech itself.
Yeah, it's so important. It's not enough to just be amazed by blockchain,
Right.
We have to actively shape it to make sure that it actually, benefits humanity.
So it's not just about code and algorithms. It's about the values that we want to see reflected in this new world.
Exactly. Yeah, the book, it really makes you think about what it means to live in a decentralized world, about how to balance individual freedom with responsibility to the larger community.
So those are big questions.
They are.
And the Tapscotts don't shy away from them.
No, they don't.
They discuss the potential impact of blockchain on everything, like from democracy to even artificial intelligence.
Yeah, one thing that really stuck with me was their discussion of the what they call the dictator's learning curve.
Oh.
It's this chilling thought that even the most advanced technology can be used for harmful purposes.
Yeah, it's a reality check. We can't just assume that technology will automatically lead to progress.
Right.
We have to be deliberate about guiding it in a positive direction.
That's why the book's focus on governance is so crucial. We need clear rules, ethical frameworks, and systems in place to hold people accountable.
But it's not just about, top-down control, right?
Right.
The Tapscotts, they also highlight how much power individuals have to shape this revolution, too.
That's right, yeah. It's about making sure that people, they actually understand blockchain technology, that they can think critically about its implications and make informed decisions about how they use it.
So it really comes down to digital literacy.
It does.
People, they need the knowledge and the skills to navigate this new world effectively.
And it's about fostering this sense of shared responsibility.
Yeah.
We all need to be aware that our actions, they really do have consequences in this interconnected, decentralized space.
That's a big task.
It is.
But one worth taking on, right?
Huh.
I think Blockchain Revolution does a great job of laying out the stakes, the potential benefits, and the risks of this technology.
Yeah. The Tapscotts don't sugarcoat things.
Yeah.
They acknowledge the challenges, like the technical limitations,
Right.
the uncertainty around regulations, the security risks.
Yeah.
But they are ultimately optimistic that we can harness this technology for good.
Yet they believe we can create a world that is more equitable and just and prosperous, but they emphasize that it takes work.
It does.
Their optimism isn't naive. They ask the tough questions, they encourage open discussion, and they urge us to work together to build the future we want to see.
Yeah.
That's what I find so inspiring about this book.
Yeah.
It's not just like a technical guide.
No.
It's a call to action, a challenge to be part of this revolution and guide it towards a better future.
And that brings us back to you, our listener.
Right.
Where do you see yourself in this unfolding story? What role will you play in shaping the blockchain revolution?
That's a question worth thinking about. As we wrap up this deep dive, we hope it sparked your curiosity to learn more about blockchain and discover its potential for yourself.
Because the future of this revolution, it truly is in our hands.
That's it for our deep dive into blockchain revolution. We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
We'll see you on the other side of the blockchain.